I was thrown into a nursing home for having cancer, and my son told me, "Just be alone, you've already caused enough problems." When he found out about my $86 million inheritance, he showed up in my room saying, "I came to ask for your forgiveness and take you home." I simply called the nurse, who walked in with an envelope. "I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and comment what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has traveled. My name is Josephine, and I'm 63 years old. I never thought my life would change so drastically on a single Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the waiting room of Dr. Miller's office, my hands sweating and my heart beating so loudly I thought everyone in the room could hear it. I had gone in for a routine checkup, but the extra tests they ordered last week had my nerves on edge. "Mrs. Johnson, you can come back," the nurse said, with that professional smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I walked into the office and sat across from the doctor's desk. He had a thick folder with my name on it and avoided looking me directly in the eye. That's never a good sign. "Josephine, I need to be direct with you," he began, adjusting his glasses. "The biopsy results confirmed what we suspected. It's stage 2 breast cancer." The words hit me like a hammer. I felt the air leave my lungs, and for a moment, everything went blurry. Cancer. The word that always happens to other people, never to you. "What does that mean exactly?" I managed to ask in a shaky voice. "It means we need to act fast. We'll start chemotherapy next week, and depending on how you respond, we'll evaluate surgery. I'm not going to lie to you, Josephine. The next few months are going to be tough. You're going to need a lot of support." Support. That word echoed in my mind as I drove home. Andrew, my only son, had always been distant, but surely this would make him reconsider. Surely news like this would bring us together as a family. I got to my small house and stood in the driveway for several minutes, trying to find the courage to make that call. Finally, I dialed Andrew's number. "Mom, it's weird for you to call during work hours," he said, with that impatient tone I knew so well. "Andrew, I need to talk to you. It's important." A sigh from the other end of the line. What happened now? "I have breast cancer." There was a long silence, so long I thought the call had dropped. "Andrew, are you there?" Yeah, I'm here. This is... Wow, how bad is it?" I explained what the doctor had told me, about the chemo, about what was to come. I waited for words of comfort, an offer of help, something to indicate I wouldn't be alone in this. "Look, Mom, this is a lot. Patricia and I need to talk about it. I'll call you later, okay?" And he hung up, just like that. "No, everything will be okay. No, we'll be there for you. Nothing." The following days were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, tests, and preparations for treatment. Andrew never called back. I didn't either. A part of me hoped he would just show up at my door, that he'd apologize for his initial coldness. Chemotherapy began the following Thursday. The first few days weren't as terrible as I'd expected, but by the second week, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I couldn't keep food down. My whole body ached, and I barely had the strength to get out of bed. That's when Andrew finally appeared. He arrived on a Sunday afternoon with Patricia and my 2 grandchildren, 8-year-old Tommy and 5-year-old Sarah. The kids ran to hug me, but Patricia stopped them. "Not too close, kids. Grandma's sick," she said with a barely concealed expression of disgust. "Mom, you look terrible." That was the first thing Andrew said to me. Not, "How are you feeling?" or "What can we do to help?" Just that I looked terrible. "The treatments are tough, but the doctor says they're working," I replied, trying to sound optimistic. Patricia walked through the house, looking at everything with disapproval. "Andrew, this can't go on. Look at this place. It's neglected, and she clearly can't take care of herself. Patricia's right, Mom. This isn't working. I froze. What do you mean? Andrew avoided my gaze. We've been looking into options. There's a very nice place, Sunset Manor. It's an assisted living facility that specializes in medical care. Are you telling me you want to put me in a nursing home? It's not a nursing home, Mom. It's a luxury residence. You'll have 24-hour care, specialized nurses, everything you need. Patricia chimed in with that fake smile she always used with me. Josephine, think about it. We have 3 young children. Andrew works 60 hours a week. We can't give you the care you deserve. But I don't need to be cared for all the time. I just need... Mom, Andrew interrupted, and for the first time, he looked me straight in the eye. His eyes were cold, determined. We've already made the decision. It's what's best for everyone. For everyone or for you? Don't make this harder than it already is, Patricia said. We've already spoken with the administration. They can take you next week. I sat in silence, processing what I had just heard. My own son, the person I had sacrificed everything for 35 years, was discarding me like an old piece of furniture. Besides, Andrew continued, with a coldness that broke my soul, let's be honest, Mom. You've always been complicated. Now, with this cancer thing, you've just brought enough trouble into our lives. Those words pierced me like daggers. Enough trouble. After I worked 2 jobs to pay for your college. After I cared for your sick father for 5 years while you lived your life. After I sold my house to help you with the down payment on yours. Patricia smiled with satisfaction, as if she had won a battle I didn't even know we were fighting. The papers are ready. You just need to sign, Andrew said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. With trembling hands, I took the documents. The letters blurred through the tears I was trying to hold back. In that moment, I knew I had lost my son forever, not to cancer, but to indifference. A week later, Andrew and Patricia arrived with a van to take my few belongings. The kids didn't come this time. They probably told them Grandma was going on a trip. As I watched my house disappear from the car window, I felt like I wasn't just leaving my home. I was leaving behind the illusion that I had a family that loved me. What Andrew didn't know, what no one knew, was that I was keeping a secret. An $86 million secret that I had kept hidden for 15 years, ever since my husband Robert died and left me an inheritance I never imagined. Money I had saved, waiting for the perfect moment to help my son, to secure my grandchildren's future. But now, sitting in the back of that car on the way to the nursing home, I realized something. Andrew had never loved me for who I was, and he was about to prove that he would only love me for what I could give him. Sunset Manor wasn't the horrible place I had imagined, but it wasn't a home either. It was a 3-story building with long hallways that smelled of disinfectant and artificial flowers. The walls were painted an institutional beige that was supposed to be calming, but I just found it depressing. My room was on the 2nd floor, number 247. A single bed, a small closet, a nightstand, and a chair by the window that overlooked the parking lot. There wasn't much to see, just cars coming and going, bringing other families to visit their loved ones, or in some cases, to abandon them as I had been abandoned. The first night, I cried myself to sleep, not because of the cancer, but because of the betrayal. The cancer was something beyond my control, but Andrew's cruelty was a conscious choice. The next day, I met my table-mate in the dining hall. Her name was Margaret Sullivan. She was 67, and she'd been a nurse for 40 years before retiring. Unlike me, she had come to Sunset Manor of her own free will after selling her house. My son lives in Seattle, she explained, as she cut her baked chicken. He invited me to live with him, but I prefer my independence. Here, I have my own space, and if I need medical help, it's available. Does your son come to visit? I asked. Every 2 months, like clockwork, and we talk on the phone every Sunday. Margaret studied me with those piercing blue eyes that had surely seen everything in her years as a nurse. And yours? My son brought me here, was all I could manage to say. Margaret nodded with understanding. She didn't ask any more questions, but somehow I knew she got it. Over the next few weeks, Margaret became my lifeline. She'd accompany me to my medical appointments when she could. She'd bring me tea when the effects of chemo had me bedridden. And most of all, she listened. It was during one of those afternoons, sitting in the small library of the home, that I finally told her the truth. Not the whole truth, but an important part of it. Margaret, can I tell you something in confidence? Of course, dear. I'm not poor. She raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Well, I mean I'm not the destitute woman my son thinks I am. When my husband Robert died 15 years ago, he left me a substantial inheritance. Very substantial. Margaret put her knitting aside and gave me her full attention. How substantial? $86 million. For the first time since I'd known her, Margaret was speechless. Her eyes widened and her mouth opened slightly. 86 million? Yes, Robert had invested in real estate in the 80s and 90s. When he died, his properties were worth a fortune. He also had stocks and investments I didn't even know existed. And why did you never tell Andrew? I was silent for a long moment, remembering. Because I wanted to know if he truly loved me. Robert always told me that money changes people, that it shows their true character. I decided to keep it as a test. A test? Yes, a test to see if Andrew would take care of me when he needed to, without expecting anything in return. If he would love me when I was old and sick, not just when I was useful to him. Margaret shook her head slowly. And he failed the test. Completely. Not only did he abandon me, but he told me I was always a problem for him, that I had brought enough trouble into his life. What are you going to do with the money? I don't know. For years, I planned on giving it all to him, to secure my grandchildren's future. But now you realize the money wouldn't have changed anything. Margaret finished for me. It would have only hidden his true nature for longer. Margaret was right. Andrew hadn't abandoned me for lack of resources. He had abandoned me because I was an inconvenience in his perfect life. The days at Sunset Manor began to fall into a routine. I'd wake up early, have breakfast with Margaret, attend my appointments, and spend the afternoons reading or talking with other residents. I met Dorothy, a 71-year-old former teacher whose children visited every Sunday without fail. I met Frank, a 75-year-old war veteran whose daughter came 3 times a week. And I also met the forgotten ones, like Helen, 69, whose only son died in an accident 5 years ago and had no other family. Like George, 80, whose 3 children lived in different states and barely called on his birthday. I began to realize that Sunset Manor was a reflection of society. There were loving families who truly cared for their elders, and there were families like mine who saw their parents as burdens. 3 weeks passed without a single call from Andrew. Not one. Not even to ask how I was responding to the treatment. Patricia didn't call either, of course. It was as if I had died to them. One afternoon, while Margaret and I were playing cards in the common room, she asked me something that made me think deeply. Josephine, do you think Andrew suspects anything about your financial situation? What do you mean? I mean, does he know you're not a financial burden, that you could pay for your own care, for private nurses, for anything you need? I thought about it carefully. No, I don't think he knows. I've always lived modestly. My house was small. My car was old. I never spent money on luxuries. After Robert died, I decided to keep the same simple lifestyle. Why? Because I didn't want people to get close to me for my money, including my own son. Margaret played her card and looked at me thoughtfully. You know, there's something poetic about all this. Andrew discarded you, thinking you were a sick, broke, and expensive old woman. He has no idea he abandoned one of the wealthiest women in the city. She was right. There was a cruel irony to the whole situation. While Andrew and Patricia were pinching pennies and worrying about my medical expenses, I had enough money to buy their house 10 times over. You know what the saddest part is? I said to Margaret as I rearranged my cards. What? That if he had truly loved me, if he had shown even a little bit of compassion, I would have shared everything with him. I would have paid for my grandchildren's college education. I would have helped with their mortgage. I would have made his life easier. But he didn't know that. Exactly. And that's the tragedy. He judged me for what he thought I didn't have, not for who I truly am. That night, lying in my single bed, looking out the window at the empty parking lot, I made a decision. Not about the money, I wasn't ready for that yet, but about Andrew. I decided I wasn't going to chase him. I wasn't going to beg him to visit. I wasn't going to call him, pleading for attention. If he wanted to hear from me, he knew where to find me. What he didn't know was that soon he would find me. And when he did, it would be too late for empty words and broken promises. Because by then, I would have made decisions that would change everything forever. I had been at Sunset Manor for 2 months when Margaret and I developed our afternoon routine. After lunch, we would sit in the small garden behind the building where a fountain gurgled softly and wrought iron benches sat under oak trees. It was the quietest place in the whole facility, and where I finally felt safe enough to speak without being overheard. You know what hurts the most? I said to Margaret one afternoon as we watched a hummingbird feed on the red garden flowers. Tell me, it's not just that Andrew abandoned me. It's that he never really knew me. He never took the time to know the woman I am, beyond just being his mother. Margaret adjusted her light blue sweater and looked at me with that understanding expression she had perfected over decades of caring for patients. What do you mean? When Robert died, I became a completely different person, not just because of the loss, but because of what I discovered about our financial situation. I had told Margaret about the inheritance, but I had never explained the whole story. That day, I decided to. Robert never talked to me about his investments in detail. I knew we had savings, that the house was paid off, but I never imagined the scale of his estate. The day I met with his lawyer, I thought there would be enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days. When they told me the exact figure, I nearly fainted. $86 million is a life-changing number, Margaret said. Exactly. And you know what the first thing I thought was? What? I thought of Andrew, how I could secure his future, Patricia's, the future of the grandchildren I hoped he'd have one day. I imagined paying off his student loans, helping them with their dream house, setting up college funds. And why didn't you? I was quiet for a moment, remembering those first days after learning about the inheritance. Because Robert had told me something before he died. We were talking about the future, about what would happen to me when he was gone, and he said something I never forgot. What did he say? He said, Josephine, money doesn't change people. It just reveals who they really are. He told me stories of families he knew, how inheritances had destroyed relationships, how children became greedy and manipulative when money was involved. Margaret nodded slowly. As a nurse, she had probably seen similar situations. So I decided to run a test, I continued. I decided I wouldn't tell Andrew anything about the money. I wanted to see if he would love and care for me when I was a burden to him, when I couldn't give him anything in return. That's a cruel test. Cruel for whom? I was still the same loving mother. I still helped him when I could. I was still there for him. The only difference was that I didn't hand him a fortune he hadn't earned. But he didn't know he was being tested. Exactly. And that's the beauty of it. His behavior towards me was completely authentic. It wasn't influenced by the expectation of an inheritance. Margaret was thoughtful for a moment. And what did you do with the money all these years? I invested it wisely. I hired the best financial advisors, diversified the investments. I never touched the principal. In 15 years, the $86 million grew into much more. How much more? The last time I checked, it was at $120 million. Margaret's eyes widened. My God, Josephine. All these years, I lived on my pension and the savings Robert and I had accumulated before I knew about his secret investments. I never touched the inheritance. It was as if it didn't exist. Were you ever tempted to use it? Thousands of times. When Andrew lost his job 5 years ago, and I wanted to help with his mortgage, when Patricia complained they couldn't afford family vacations, when my grandkids needed new clothes, and I saw Andrew and Patricia making sacrifices. But you didn't. I didn't. Because every time I thought about revealing the secret, I remembered Robert's words. Money reveals people's true character. A gentle breeze rustled the oak leaves above us. In the distance, you could hear the sound of the TV in the common room, where some residents were watching their afternoon shows. You know what the most ironic part of this whole situation is? I asked Margaret. Tell me. Andrew always complained that I didn't have enough money. When he and Patricia bought their house, he commented that he wished I could help with a larger down payment. When the kids were born, Patricia mentioned several times how expensive it was to raise children and how helpful it would be to have a wealthy grandmother. They were constantly hinting for money, and every time they did, I felt guilty for not being able to help more. But at the same time, I was watching how they treated me when they thought I had nothing to offer. And how did they treat you? Like an obligation. The visits became less and less frequent. The phone calls got shorter. When I talked about my minor health problems, I saw impatience in their eyes. When I mentioned I was lonely, they changed the subject. Margaret took my hand with the gentleness that characterized experienced nurses. Josephine, I think your test yielded very clear results. Yes, I sighed deeply. Andrew failed me completely. He didn't just fail me, he betrayed me. When I needed him most, when I was at my most vulnerable, he threw me away like trash. And what are you going to do now? Now, I know exactly who my son is. He is a man who only loves me conditionally, who sees me as a burden when I can't give him something in return. A comfortable silence fell between us. The hummingbird had returned and was flitting around the flowers, completely oblivious to our human complications. Margaret, can I tell you something else? Of course. I have cancer, but my chances of survival are good. The doctor says that with the right treatment, I could have many years ahead of me, years Andrew assumed I wouldn't have. What do you mean? I think Andrew put me in here hoping I would die, quickly and quietly, that the cancer would consume me in a few months, and he wouldn't have to deal with me for very long. Margaret's expression hardened. That's a terrible thing to think. But it's also revealing. Even facing the possibility of my death, his first reaction was to get rid of me, not to care for me. Did it ever occur to you that maybe he just doesn't know how to handle the fear of losing you? I considered her question carefully. Margaret, if Andrew was afraid of losing me, he would have fought for every moment he had left with me. He would have wanted to care for me himself. He would have wanted to be close. Instead, he pushed me as far away as possible. You're right. For 15 years, I waited to see if my son would love me without expectations. And the answer is no. He doesn't love me. He loves the idea of having a mother who doesn't cause him any trouble. Margaret was silent for a long time, processing everything I had told her. Josephine, she said finally, I think it's time you made a decision about that money. You have $120 million and a son who has proven he doesn't deserve you. What are you going to do? I looked toward the Sunset Manor building, at the windows where people like Helen and George lived, abandoned by families who didn't value them. I thought of Dorothy, whose family loved her unconditionally. I thought of Margaret, who had chosen this place because she valued her independence. I'm going to do something Andrew would never expect, I told her. I'm going to take control of my own life, and when I'm done, he's going to know exactly what he lost. I had been at Sunset Manor for 3 months when everything changed on a single Thursday afternoon. It was a day like any other. I had finished my morning chemo session, had lunch with Margaret, and retired to my room to rest. The treatments were making me more tired than usual, but the doctor had confirmed the cancer was responding well. I was dozing when I heard voices in the hallway. One of them was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I thought maybe I was dreaming, but the voices were getting closer to my door. Mrs. Josephine Johnson is in room 247, I heard the afternoon shift nurse say. Perfect. I need her to sign some urgent documents, replied a male voice I definitely didn't recognize. There was a soft knock on my door. Mrs. Johnson, there's a gentleman here to see you. I got out of bed, put on my robe, and opened the door. In front of me was a man in his 50s, dressed in an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Behind him, to my absolute shock, was Andrew. Mom, Andrew said with a smile I hadn't seen in years. You look so much better. The man in the suit stepped forward. Mrs. Johnson, I'm Jonathan Walsh from the law firm Walsh & Associates. I need to speak with you about your investments. My heart stopped. For 15 years, I had managed to keep my financial affairs completely private. How was it possible that this lawyer was here? My investments? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Yes, ma'am. Your financial advisor, Mr. Richard Coleman, sent me to have you sign some documents regarding the redistribution of your portfolio. Apparently, there have been some significant market changes that require your immediate attention. Andrew was standing behind the lawyer, and I could see something in his eyes I had never seen before. A mixture of shock, confusion, and something else. Something that looked a lot like greed. Can you come into my room? I said, though every fiber of my being wanted to slam the door and pretend this wasn't happening. Once inside, Mr. Walsh opened his briefcase and took out a thick folder. Mrs. Johnson, I need to confirm some numbers with you before we proceed. According to our records, your current net worth is approximately $122 million. The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Andrew had frozen, staring at me as if he was seeing me for the first time in his life. I'm sorry, what? Andrew mumbled. The lawyer looked between us, clearly confused. You weren't aware of your mother's estate, sir? Andrew is my son, I said in a weak voice. Oh, I see. Well, yes, your mother has been very prudent with her investments. The inheritance she received from her late husband has multiplied considerably over the past 15 years. Andrew sat down heavily in the only chair in my room, His face had lost all its color. Mom, he said in a trembling voice, is this true? I couldn't lie, not after 15 years. Yes, Andrew, it's true. Why did you never tell me? Mr. Walsh cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps I should give you two some privacy. I can return later for the documents." "No," I said firmly. "We can handle this now." I signed the papers quickly, barely reading what they said. My mind was completely focused on Andrew, on his expression of total disbelief. After the lawyer left, Andrew and I were alone for the first time since he had checked me in. He was still sitting in the chair, looking at me as if I were a stranger. $122 million, he said slowly. "All this time, I thought—" "You thought what, Andrew?" "I thought you had nothing. I thought you were a financial burden. I thought taking care of you would be too expensive for us." The brutal honesty of his words cut me like a knife. "Was that the only reason you put me in here? The money?" Andrew ran his hands through his hair, a habit he'd had since he was a little boy when he was nervous. "Mom, you have to understand. Patricia and I have been struggling financially. The kids, the mortgage, my student loans. When you got sick, we thought about the medical bills, the specialized care you were going to need. And we thought we couldn't afford it, that it would ruin our financial future. So you discarded me. I didn't discard you. I put you in a place where you could receive the best possible care. Andrew, this place costs $6,000 a month. Where did you think that money was going to come from if I was as poor as you believed?" He fell silent. He clearly hadn't considered that question. "Your health insurance and Medicare are paying for it," he said finally. "My insurance covers a fraction. I pay the rest." "How?" "With the money that's been right in front of your face for 15 years. But you never bothered to ask about it." Andrew stood up and started pacing in the small space of my room. "This makes no sense. If you had all that money, why did you live in that small house? Why did you drive that old car? Why did you never help us when we were struggling?" "Because I wanted to know if you would love me when I had nothing to give you." "What?" "I wanted to know if you would take care of me when I was old and sick, not out of obligation or for money, but out of love." Andrew's expression changed. The confusion was replaced by something more dangerous: anger. "Are you telling me this was a test?" "Yes." "A test that lasted 15 years?" "Yes." "And I failed it?" "Completely." Andrew stopped in his tracks and looked at me with a fury I had never seen in him. "Do you have any idea what we've been through? The things we've had to sacrifice? The nights Patricia has cried because we couldn't afford the things we wanted for our children?" "Andrew, I never asked you to sacrifice anything. But you could have prevented all of it. You could have made our lives easier. And then what? Would you have loved me for the money I could give you, or for who I am? You're my mother. You were supposed to help me. I was supposed to love you unconditionally, but the first time I needed your help, you abandoned me." Andrew sat down again, this time on the edge of my bed. His anger was morphing into something different, desperation maybe. "Mom," he said in a softer voice, "this changes everything. I didn't know you had resources. If I had known, what would you have done differently? I would have taken care of you myself. I would have hired private nurses. I would have converted the study into a special room for you." "Because of the money?" "No, because... He paused, trying to find the right words. "Andrew, the question is simple. If I were the same poor, sick woman you thought I was an hour ago, would you be here right now, offering to take care of me?" He couldn't answer, and in his silence, I found my answer. "I want you to leave," I told him calmly. "What?" "I want you to leave my room. I need to think." "Mom, we can fix this. We can—" "Andrew, please, just go." After a long moment, he slowly got up. "Can we talk tomorrow?" "Maybe." When he closed the door behind him, I sat on my bed and finally processed what had happened. My 15-year-old secret had been revealed in the most unexpected way possible, and Andrew's reaction had confirmed everything I feared about his true character. I knew this wasn't over. I knew Andrew would be back, probably with Patricia, and I knew they would have a plan. What they didn't know was that I had one too. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, processing everything that had happened. The accidental revelation of my fortune had changed everything, but not in the way Andrew probably hoped. Instead of feeling relief at finally being able to be honest, I felt more betrayed than ever. At 6 a.m, Margaret knocked softly on my door. As a former nurse, she had an instinct for when someone needed company. "Can I come in?" she asked in her gentle voice. "Please," I replied, grateful to have someone to talk to. Margaret came in and immediately noticed my bed hadn't been slept in. "You didn't sleep?" "I couldn't. Margaret, something happened yesterday." I told her everything about the lawyer's visit, the accidental revelation, Andrew's reaction. Margaret listened in silence, nodding occasionally, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "So, what are you going to do now?" she asked when I finished. "Honestly, I don't know, but I know Andrew is coming back, and he'll probably bring Patricia." As if I had summoned them, a nurse knocked on my door at exactly 2 p.m. "Mrs. Johnson, you have visitors." My stomach tightened. "Who is it?" "Your son and daughter-in-law, and they brought the children too." Margaret squeezed my hand. "Do you want me to stay with you?" "Yes, please. I think I'm going to need a witness." When Andrew came in with Patricia and my grandchildren, everything was different. Andrew was carrying a huge bouquet of red roses. Patricia had a fruit basket, and the kids ran toward me with an energy I hadn't seen in years. "Grandma Josephine," shouted 8-year-old Tommy, hugging me tightly. "Dad says you're going to come live with us." My heart broke. They had used my grandchildren as emotional weapons. 5-year-old Sarah handed me a drawing she had made. "It's your new room at our house, Grandma. Dad says it's going to be really pretty." Patricia approached with that smile I now recognized as completely fake. "Josephine, dear, we are so sorry about everything that happened. We acted rashly." "Mom," Andrew said, placing the flowers on the only table in my room. "I've been thinking all night. I made a terrible mistake, an unforgivable mistake." Margaret sat silently in the corner chair, observing everything with those experienced nurses' eyes that had seen all kinds of family dramas. "What kind of mistake?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I shouldn't have brought you here. I should have fought harder to take care of you at home. I should have—" He paused, trying to find the right words. "I should have been a better son." Patricia nodded vigorously. "We've been talking all night, Josephine. We want you to come home with us. We already have everything planned." "What do you have planned?" Andrew sat on the edge of my bed, took my hands, and looked me directly in the eyes. It was the first time in years there had been so much affection in his gaze. Affection I knew was completely false. "We're going to convert the first floor of the house into a full suite for you. A spacious bedroom, a bathroom with all the adaptations you need, even a small kitchen if you want some independence." "I've already spoken with 3 construction companies," Patricia added. "We can have everything ready in 6 weeks." Tommy climbed onto my bed. "I'm going to help take care of you, Grandma. Mom says I can read with you every night." Sarah snuggled up beside me. "Are you going to come home with us? Please say yes." I looked at these innocent children, manipulated into being part of a performance their parents had carefully orchestrated. They were victims of their parents' greed just as much as I was. "Kids," I said gently, "can you go see the fountain in the garden for a few minutes? The grown-ups need to talk." Andrew nodded. "Yeah, go play. We'll be right here." Once the children left, the atmosphere in the room completely changed. The smiles faded. The voices became more calculated. "Mom," Andrew said, "I know you have reasons to be angry with me, but we can fix all of this." "How?" "Well," Patricia cleared her throat, "we can start by getting you out of this place. We can get you the best private medical care, the best doctors, the best treatments. And we can be a real family," Andrew continued. "We can spend time together. We can include you in everything. The kids miss you terribly." "Andrew, the kids haven't seen me in 3 months. This is the first time you've come to visit me since you left me here." "Because we thought it was what was best for you," Patricia said quickly. "But now we know we can give you better care at home. Now you know." "Yes," Andrew said. "Now that we understand your financial situation, we can make appropriate plans." There it was. The truth finally came out. "So you're telling me the difference between abandoning me here and wanting to take care of me at home is my money?" "No," Andrew protested. "It's that now we understand we can afford to give you the care you deserve." "Andrew," I said calmly, "yesterday, when you thought I was poor, did I deserve less care?" He fell silent. "Did you love me less when you thought I had nothing?" "Mom, that's not fair." "What's not fair? The question is simple. Does your love for me depend on my bank account?" Patricia intervened. "Josephine, Andrew loves you regardless of the money. It's just that now we can do things properly." "Patricia," I said, turning to her, 3 months ago, you told me I was too much trouble for your family, that you had 3 children and couldn't deal with me as well. What changed?" She blinked several times. "Well, we were stressed." "And now you're not stressed anymore?" "Now we have options," Andrew admitted. "With your resources, we can hire help. We can make it work." "With my resources." "With our family resources," Patricia corrected. The audacity of that statement left me speechless for a moment. In less than 24 hours, my money had become family resources. Margaret cleared her throat from her corner. "Forgive me for interrupting, but I have a question." Andrew and Patricia looked at her as if they had forgotten she was there. "How long have you been planning this?" Margaret asked. "Excuse me?" Patricia said. "I mean the plan to take Josephine home, convert the first floor into a suite, hire private care. How long did it take you to develop this detailed plan?" Andrew looked at her uncomfortably. "Well, since last night we've been..." "So, in less than 24 hours, Margaret continued, you went from thinking Josephine was too expensive a burden to having a complete home care plan that includes major renovations and private medical staff." "The circumstances changed," Patricia muttered. "Yes," Margaret said with a cold smile. "The financial circumstances changed." Andrew stood up abruptly. "Who are you to judge us? What do you know about our family?" "I know your mother has cried herself to sleep every night since she got here," Margaret said, unflinching. "I know she hoped for a single phone call from you in 3 months, and it never came. And I know that yesterday, when you thought she had no money, you personally told me you hoped the cancer would take her quickly so you wouldn't have to deal with her for much longer." The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew had turned pale. Patricia was staring at her in shock. "That's not true," Andrew said weakly. "Do you want me to call the other residents who were present when you said it?" Margaret asked. I looked at Andrew, my own son, and I saw the truth on his face. He hadn't just abandoned me. He had been waiting for me to die. "I want you to leave," I said in a low voice. "Mom, I want you to take the children and leave, now. Mom, we can fix this." I got out of bed, and for the first time in months, I felt strong. "No, Andrew, nothing can be fixed anymore." Patricia approached, desperation in her eyes. "Josephine, think about it. The children need you. We need you. You need me now. You didn't need me 3 months ago." Families make mistakes, Andrew said, but we're family. That has to mean something. You're right, I said, walking to the window. Family does mean something. It means unconditional love. It means being there through good times and bad. It means not abandoning people when they are sick and scared. I turned to face him. But you are no longer my family, Andrew. You're a stranger who shares my last name. Andrew approached me, his eyes filled with tears that finally seemed genuine. Mom, please, give me a chance to fix this. I gave you a chance. I gave you 15 years of chances. And when the moment of truth came, you failed me. I walked to the door and opened it. Now I want you to leave. And when you walk out that door, I want you to call a nurse. There's something she needs to bring me. Andrew and Patricia stood in the doorway of my room, clearly not knowing what to do. I had caught them completely off guard. They had come with their perfectly rehearsed performance, expecting me to melt at the sight of my grandchildren's tears and the empty promises of a happy family life. Mom, Andrew said one last time, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Leave. Patricia took Andrew's arm. Ben, let's go. She's upset. We can come back tomorrow when she's calmer. You will not be coming back tomorrow, I said firmly. You will not be coming back ever. You're our mother, Andrew shouted, finally losing his composure. You can't just cut us out of your life. You cut me out of yours 3 months ago. I'm just returning the favor. Margaret stepped toward the door. I think it's time for you to leave. Josephine needs to rest. You have no right to interfere in family matters, Patricia yelled at Margaret. And you had no right to abandon a sick 63-year-old woman, Margaret replied, her calm a stark contrast to Patricia's growing hysteria. Andrew approached me one last time. Mom, I know I made mistakes, but please, give me a chance to be better, to be the son you should have had. His words were pretty, but they came too late. For 15 years, I had waited for him to be the son I deserved, and when I needed him most, he showed me who he really was. Andrew, I don't want the son you should have been. I wanted the son you were, and that son doesn't love me. He broke then. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally streamed down his cheeks. I do love you, Mom. I know I haven't shown it well, but I love you. You love me now that you know I have $122 million. You didn't love me yesterday when you thought I was a poor old woman with cancer. That's not true. Andrew, I said with a deep sadness, if it were true that you love me, regardless of the money, you would have been here 3 months ago, taking care of me. You would have been here every single day during my chemotherapy. You would have fought this disease by my side. Patricia approached with desperate eyes. Josephine, think of the children. They're not to blame for our mistakes. They love you genuinely. She was right about the children. Tommy and Sarah had run to me with real, uncalculated love. But I also knew that if I went with them, Patricia and Andrew would use my grandchildren to manipulate me for the rest of my life. The children can visit me here whenever they want, I said, but without you. That's ridiculous, Patricia exclaimed. We're not bringing our children to a nursing home. Then I guess I won't be seeing them. Your decision. Andrew ran his hands through his hair, that nervous childhood gesture he still had at 35. Mom, this is insane. You have more money than we could spend in 3 lifetimes. We could travel together. We could do incredible things as a family. With my money? With our family money, Patricia corrected automatically. The audacity never ceased to amaze me. In less than 24 hours, they had gone from seeing me as a financial burden to claiming rights to my fortune. Get out of my room, I said, tired of the whole conversation. Now. After several more minutes of useless protests, they finally left. I heard them in the hallway, trying to convince the children that Grandma was very sick, and that's why she couldn't come home with them. Margaret gently closed the door behind them and turned to me. "Are you okay?" "Better than I've been in years," I answered honestly. "Now what?" "Now I call a nurse to bring me something I've had stored away since I got here." Margaret looked at me curiously as I pressed the call button. 5 minutes later, the afternoon shift nurse knocked on my door. "Do you need something, Mrs. Johnson?" "Yes. In my nightstand, there's a large manila envelope. Could you bring it to me, please?" When the nurse returned with the envelope, my hands trembled slightly as I took it. I had prepared it 2 weeks after arriving at Sunset Manor, when I finally accepted that Andrew would never come for me out of love. "What is it?" Margaret asked. "My new will," I said, opening the envelope and pulling out several legal documents. I had it drawn up 2.5 months ago. I knew this day would eventually come. Margaret sat beside me as I looked through the papers. "What does it say?" "It says that Andrew Johnson, my only son, will not receive a single penny of my inheritance." "And the money?" $90 million goes to the National Cancer Research Foundation, specifically for breast cancer research. $20 million goes to establish a fund to improve the facilities and services at Sunset Manor and other similar homes. $10 million goes into an educational trust for Tommy and Sarah, available when they turn 21, provided they maintain contact with me. Margaret smiled. "And the remaining $2 million? $1 million goes to you, Margaret, for being the friend Andrew never was, and $1 million is left for my expenses until I die." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Josephine, I can't accept that." "It's already done. The papers are signed and notarized." Margaret was silent for a long moment. "You know Andrew is going to fight this legally." "Let him try. I have the best lawyers in the country and all the documentation needed to prove I was of sound mind when I made these decisions." That night, after Margaret had gone back to her room, I sat by the window, looking at the parking lot. For the first time in 3 months, I didn't see that space as a symbol of abandonment. I saw it as a symbol of freedom. My phone rang at 10 o'clock. Andrew. "Mom." His voice sounded desperate. "I've been thinking about everything you said. You're right. I've been a terrible son." "Yes, you have. But I want to change. Give me a chance to show you I can be better." "Andrew, why are you calling me now?" A long silence. "Because you're my mother, and I love you." "And last night? Did you love me last night when you didn't know about the money?" Another silence. "Andrew, let me ask you something. If you found out tomorrow that I have no money, that it was all a misunderstanding, would you still want to take care of me?" The pause that followed gave me the answer I needed. "Mom, that's an unfair hypothetical question." "No, it's the only question that matters. Look, I made mistakes, but now I can fix them." "Andrew, I don't want you to fix them anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means I've decided to stay here at Sunset Manor. It means I've decided to surround myself with people who love me for who I am, not for what I have. It means I've decided to live my final years in peace. But this place is for people who don't have families." "No," I said calmly. "This place is for people whose families love them enough to want what's best for them. Margaret is here because her son respects her enough to support her decisions. I am here because I finally respect myself enough to walk away from people who hurt me." "Mom, Andrew, tomorrow you're going to receive some legal documents from my lawyer. I suggest you read them carefully." "What kind of documents?" "The ones that explain exactly what you lost when you decided I was too much trouble for you." I hung up the phone and turned it off completely. 6 months later, I'm writing this from the new terrace they built at Sunset Manor, paid for with part of my donation. My cancer is in full remission. Margaret and I have become inseparable, traveling together, taking art classes, laughing like teenagers. Andrew tried to contest the will, but he was unsuccessful. His lawyers told him I had the absolute right to dispose of my money as I wished. Patricia called me once, screaming that I had ruined her children's future. I reminded her that her children had a $10 million trust waiting for them. Tommy and Sarah visit me every Saturday afternoon. Andrew drops them off and stays in the car while they spend time with me. At first, I tried to feel sorry for him, sitting out there, waiting. But then I remembered the nights I spent alone in this room, waiting for a call that never came. Last week, Tommy asked me why his dad doesn't come inside with him anymore. Because sometimes, I explained, grown-ups make decisions that can't be undone. Like when I broke my favorite toy? Exactly like that, my love. Exactly like that. This afternoon, while Margaret and I were having tea on the terrace, she asked if I ever regret my decision. You mean the test? The 15 years of silence about the money? I thought about it carefully. No, because if I hadn't run the test, I would have lived the rest of my life not knowing the truth. I would have died believing Andrew loved me, when in reality, he only loved what I could give him. And now? Now I live surrounded by real love. Yours, the other residents, my grandchildren's. It's less love than I expected to have at 63, but it's genuine. As I write these last lines, I can see Margaret in the garden, teaching Sarah how to plant flowers. Tommy is sitting by the fountain, reading one of the books I bought him. Andrew is still in the parking lot, looking up at my window. Sometimes I think he's waiting for me to change my mind, to forgive him and give him back his inheritance. But some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds don't heal. And some decisions, once made, set your soul free forever. I am Josephine Johnson. I am 63 years old. I survived cancer. And for the first time in my life, I am completely free.